It's indeed a privilege to welcome you to First Presbyterian Trinity Church as we celebrate a very special occasion, which is our lecture series. And this lecture series was born about a year ago as we recognize not only one of our very own in our church community, but a man who has meant a lot to this community as well. So this is a lecture series that has been dedicated to Professor Bob Manley and Dr. Zachary Yamba, who has, as we talked this morning, moved back into the work life again. So, Dr. Yamba, we are so glad to have you coming with us again today as we recognize your special work that you've done in the community. So thank you so much for the work that you continue to do in our community. And Bob today, Professor Manley, is with family, so he sends his very best and continued support as he's worked on this very special occasion along with our chairs. I see one of my chairs behind the camera. So Carol Forbes, thank you so much for your work that you've been doing. Maria Ricardo, thank you so much for your work. I also see Linda. Linda, thank you so much for your work that you continue to do, because we would not be here without some of this very special power that comes behind the scene. So they have made this a very well orchestrated event. So thank you for that. And we will meet to hear more about our special guest as he presents today. But let me, without holding you anymore, just open this time in a time of prayer. Gracious and loving God, it's through your Spirit that you move us to be people that are instruments of your peace. You compel us to go out into the world and to continue to open doors so that we can meet one another. You ask us to not become preoccupied with how we can win, but more or less to be continually bound by the way that we can abide with one another. Teach us once again that law never prevails without the healing power of a sense of trust in a greater good. How we can become even more powerful as we sow seeds of peace instead of becoming instruments of war. Bless this time that we have so that as we can learn from one another and we can teach one another what it means to abide together, that we can go out and talk once again to our neighbors and our friends in this very troubled world about ways that we can advance peace, become reconcilers, and also to become good citizens of this greater good that you consider in our lives together. And that greater good, of course, is the common bond of our unity. So keep us in this mindset as we work together today. We give you thanks. Amen.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And thank you everyone again for coming out today to join us in this lecture series. I'm Maria Ricardo, co-chair of the Church and Society Committee here at First Presbyterian Trinity. And just before I get started, I wanted to be able to read a little bit about Dr. Bartoli's bio. You have a small part of it in the program you have sitting in front of you, but I want to give you a little bit more expanded piece on that. Prior to doing that, I just wanted to do a little housekeeping for you. We have the restrooms just outside this door. Go a little bit to your, I have bad directions when I come to my left and right. Go a little bit to your left, and then down the hall to your right, and then go through the swinging doors towards the stairs, and you'll find the men's and ladies' room through those doors. And also, and I know Dr. Bartoli is going to give you other instructions. This is going to be a very interactive program that he's going to have for us. In the seats in front of you, and they're sort of distributed around, are these books with paper in them. It's not enough for everyone to go around, but there's plenty of paper inside. So if you share with each other, as once he gets started, we'll just rip the pages out and pass them along. So let me tell you a little bit about him before he comes out to talk to us. Andrea Bartoli is an international conflict resolution expert. He has served in key academic and diplomatic positions for more than 2 decades. He's been selected in 2013 as the Dean of the School of Diplomacy and International Relations at Seton University, just down the road from us. Prior to his appointment, he served as the Dean of George Mason University School of Conflict Analysis and Resolution. Before joining SCAR, Dr. Bartoli founded and directed the Center for International Conflict Resolution at Columbia University School of International and Public Affairs. He remains a scholar there, or he remains a senior research scholar at the Seton Institute on War and Peace Studies. He also served as chair of the Columbia University Seminar on Conflict Resolution, and he launched its master's program in negotiation and conflict resolution. He was a highly collaborative scholar, and still is, and he has a record of various publications, which he's done with other colleagues and students. His primary research endeavors have been related to genocide prevention and international conflict resolution. Dr. Bartoli's international portfolio also spans more than 2 decades and 4 continents. And he served as the permanent representative of the community of San Egidio, this community is to the United Nations and the United States since 1992. In this role, he has been involved in many successful diplomatic activities. He has served in numerous peacekeeping processes, including Mozambique, 1990 to 1992, Guatemala in 1995, Algeria in 1995, Kosovo in 1998, Burundi in 1999 to 2000, Democratic Republic of the Congo, 1996, and it's still ongoing, his involvement there, and in Casamance, 1994, also still ongoing. He has been a participant and testified before Congress in the U.S. State Department's testimony on religious persecution abroad, and he was a member of the Department of State's Religious and Foreign Policy Working Group in 2012. He oversaw the development and implementation of CICR and SCAR's interventions in Burma, Myanmar, East Timor, Colombia, Iraq, and African Great Lakes region. He has worked for and collaborated with both public and private sector partners such as the United Nations, the World Bank, the Global Coalition to Prevent Armed Conflicts, the Ford Foundation, the Hewlett Foundation, the European Union, Parliamentarians for Global Action, as well as for governments of Norway, East Timor, Portugal, Sweden, Poland, and Switzerland. It's a lot. But what I'll do is I'll stop now, let him come up and sure he'll say a bit more about himself. I'm just very eager to get started and listen to what he has to say. Thank you very much.
So beginning this month, I'm very grateful to Maria, I'm very grateful to the pastor for, and I'm very grateful to our Russian friend that reminded me that today is Easter for the Orthodox Church. It's a wonderful occasion to be back in the moment of celebrating. I want to shake hands if you don't mind. It's nice to be here. It's my first time at First Presbyterian Trinity, and I'm delighted that I can meet all of you. I am very happy to. I know you already, so you change the series. I am delighted because I know very well that churches are not made by grace, but by people. And I'm very, very delighted that I can speak with a living church. I am a new one. Very good. Another new one. I must admit that one of the reasons I decided to come was actually because of the travel world, I felt that the title was just perfect for me, that this was exactly what I could resonate, because sometimes life is hard. And the world is indeed very tough. And what we can do is just to try. You don't need to try because you know that you're going to succeed. I am aware that there are many that are thinking of a prosperity gospel, that you do things and then things work out, and so it's not true. I am a devout Christian, and my Lord went on a cross because he was Lord. And he was saved by the Lord. He didn't save himself. So I think that effort is an interesting category. Because what I see, that there is a connection between the travel world we are living in and a lot of people not even trying to make the effort to make it better. So the reason I'm very interested by the gospel because I felt that was in a way in itself a call to take our own efforts seriously. So I will speak today in 3 different portions. The first portion will be on God, the second one on us, and the third one on the states, on the people living together. And the reason you have the piece of paper is because I really like to work with you in a way, not just present myself, but also ask you something back. And what I'm asking back is, you're hearing what I'm saying. If anybody has ever had an argument with somebody, if anybody ever had a difficulty with somebody, experienced the very human condition of hearing something different than what is said. So if I'm saying something, what you are hearing is not what I'm saying. What you are hearing is what you are hearing. And very often, when the listener is loving, when the listener is present, when the listener is filled with faith, you have this incredible miracle, like Jesus on the cross. In a world where nobody was listening, he was listening to everybody around. And he said, Lord, forgive them because they don't know what they're doing. He was able to listen to them even though they were not able to speak. So I think that we come from a tradition where listening is actually very powerful. It's not powerful only the one that speaks. It's very powerful even the one that listens. So in a way I need you to be powerful with me, or to give me more power, because you will listen to what I say. And together maybe we will say something that the Lord would like us to say. So this is why every 10-15 minutes I will stop and I will ask you to take a piece of paper if you want to take a piece of paper. If you don't want, it's okay. But just focus on 1 or 2 things of what I said so far that really resonate with you. And you say, oh, that piece was very important, this thing was very important. Or things that you really disagree, things that you really say, oh my God, what can possibly say something like that? I really disagree about this. Or things that are interesting but you want to know more. How happened that he said this and then he didn't elaborate more, and so on and so forth. So that when we have the question and answer, you will not just have general questions. You will be much more helpful to me in making the speech closer, stronger, better. And so we will have a good time together. Is that okay? Yes. We are all very. So, and obviously if you want to write down things as I speak, that's perfectly fine. And if you want to interrupt me, feel free to interrupt me anytime. But I would say, 10-15 minutes, we will stop a little bit and then we will do this exercise. So, the first thing I would like to say is to share a word of gratitude. I'm just very grateful to be here. I'm a professor, but I'm a professor from Italy. As my accent reveals, I'm not Irish, I'm not this is really becoming serious. That's exactly as I I didn't even ask, they were listening. There are many in this world that cannot even start begging for attention. There are many that are just transparent. Nobody sees them. No, they are not there. And so there is something very interesting in Scripture that Jesus really insists, and God consistently insists that pay attention to the poor. There is something about Jesus himself hiding in the experience of the poor that is, for anyone who is trying to be Christians, very telling. I was hungry, I was thirsty, I was a stranger, I was sick, I was in prison. So Jesus is clearly in the poor, but he's in a way inviting us to go and listen to the poor because there is something that happened to us when we try to listen to the poor. This is interesting because a lot of people realize that there is a story of the Good Samaritan, and now the Good Samaritan gives life to the half-dead man that was on the street. But you can say that the Samaritan was not good until he had pity on that man. So in many ways, that man, that poor person, made the Samaritan good, or created the condition for the Samaritan to become good. Does that make sense? So the Lord is saying, pay attention to the poor because I want you to be good. Because he wants us to be better. Because he wants us to be him. Because he wants us to be loving. Not loving only ourselves, not only those who are with us, but loving everyone, especially the poor. So there is something very profound about this link between peace and poor and peace. Be attentive to the poor, listen and pay attention. There is also another reason why we need to pay attention to the poor in its connection to peace, because the poor ask for peace, long for peace, need peace more than anyone else. This is systematic. War comes here tomorrow, the rich are gone. They have money, they have cars, they have airplanes, they have documents, they can go in a moment. The rich move very quickly. The poor are the ones that are stuck. The poor are the ones that cannot even walk. The poor are the ones that need somebody to move them because they cannot move anymore. So war comes, the poor are the ones that are going to suffer the most. I can see that you are not. I can say that's true. It's true. It's true. The poor are the mothers with children that they cannot move. The poor are the elderly that cannot move. The poor are the ones that have a leg that doesn't work well as in the past. I understand that you are now back in moving things and we are very happy. But we know that our body can also be a prison for us. Think of nursing homes. Think of hospitals. Think of people at home back. Amen. So you see that if you are poor, you are stuck. If you are poor, you are stuck. You cannot move. So to pay attention to the poor means to bring something life-giving, something moving that comes when you pay attention. So our attentiveness brings life to those who are begging for life. Our attentiveness reveals something and makes us together a beautiful gift of life. I like to say that I am a gift from Mozambique to the US. I became a peacemaker conflict resolution because the Mozambicans decided to have a very unexpected peace process in 1992, asking a small group of Italian NGOs called Community of Sant'Egidio to mediate between the government and the guerrilla movement. I was in charge of the relationship with the UN, and so I came to this country to follow this process. But in many ways, I really felt all the time that I was made with the Community of Sant'Egidio something by the actions of others. They were making peace, they needed to have a place where they could talk together and have direct talk. They didn't want to go to the UN because they felt that was too bureaucratic and too official. And we were connected to them well enough to reach the local people and so on. But I think that what I discovered in that process is that we need to be responsive to what life is sending our way. And we need to be responsive. Whenever you are in doubt, or when the self becomes too much with you, apply the following test. Recall the face of the poorest and weakest man or woman, the weakest person whom you have seen, and ask yourself if the step you contemplate is going to be of any use for him or her. Will he gain anything by it? Will it restore her or him to a control over his or her own life and destiny? In other words, will it lead to freedom, to liberty, for the hungry and spiritually starving aliens? Then you will find your doubt and self melt away. Very interesting. I find this talisman very interesting because it says when you want to do the important things, when you are in doubt, when you are uncertain, you really need to think about the actions of your doing in relation to the poorest person you know. Not just an ideal person, but somebody that you really met, somebody that you have in mind. And make your decision in such a way that your decision is actually benefiting this person. I like that text because it tells me something. It tells me that I have some power. Not the whole power, not everything, but I have some power. I have the power to speak. I have the power to move. I have the power to welcome. I have the power to listen. Can this power help somebody? I think it does. It makes a difference to come to the First Presbyterian and Trinity Church and speak about the poor. Instead of saying, you know what, look for success, look for money, look for what power tells you. I'm choosing my words. And I'm doing it because I think that that's where my heart is, where my life is, but also where the poorest person that I know will benefit from you and I sharing in these words. So, this is my second portion of the speech. So if you don't mind to again pay attention to your own listening, to what I said. And just right now pay attention to what anything of what I said resonates with you. And then after that you will share it with somebody that is close to you. have these kind of exercises, you have groups that are very intense and they speak a lot, and then others who are doing more deeply. But I think it's good that we engage together. And so as I said, there are things that I think comes out of paying attention to God and the poor. And the first obviously is really paying attention. Is not living our lives thinking that everything is fine and end with me. I think it's very, very important to realize that the discipline of paying attention is a very, very important discipline. And I would like to share a story that many of you may not know. This comes from Syria. You know that in Syria there is a terrible war, more than 200,000 people died. The more they clashed, the more they got entrenched. One saying, I really want to unify Mozambique. A lot of people. So how did peace come about? Never be able to be back in the Netherlands. Think about it. How do you start speaking peace in those conditions? And yet, they did. They did. And fortunately enough, they did that without trusting the colonial power, without trusting the Portuguese. They looked for a place and they found this Christian community, Radio Santa Gio, because there was a bishop in Mozambique that died a few weeks ago, Jaime Gonzalez, who was a friend of ours. He was just a priest, but he was very need to respond. And in this sense, I think that it's important to recognize that when we pay attention and intelligently recognize what is good, we are making what is good strong. So, I don't know how expert you are about Syria, but I'm pretty sure that not many of you knew about the microagreement. Am I right? How many people knew that there were disagreements? No. Very. Now that you know that there were disagreements, these agreements are strong. You say, well, I'm not in Syria. I'm not in the UN. I'm not somebody that really counts. Well, but the very experience of the fact that somebody in Syria thinks that this micro agreement and that First Presbyterian and Trinity Church knows about it, make the agreement strong. Does that make any sense? So you don't need to shift from zero to everything to make something more powerful. Powerfulness, power comes with practice. It's like a little boy, you start doing one step and then another one and then another one. And then we start here and then step by step we grow. So there is a very important role that intelligence gives us, that is to stress what is good. All the time, anywhere, all the time. When we see somebody that is good, it's very, very important to say, this is good. This is very good. And guess what? This was what the good Lord was doing in Genesis, at the very beginning of creation. The Lord was not just doing things, He was checking them out. He was saying, oh, I did this. Is this good? Oh yeah, it's very good. Does that make sense? So, to be intelligent is not just to do things, but to do them and then have a step back and say, oh, is this good? Yes, it is good. Let's do what the Lord did. That's what we need to do. So we don't need just to be good, we also need to understand that we are becoming good. There is something doing something good, and then we need to understand that what we are doing is actually good. The third thing is the discipline of being reasonable. Lots of time, I'm an expert on conflict resolution, lots of time people get in trouble because they are unreasonable. They just ask things to people that they don't have. I Che succede se io parlo italiano? Nessuno capisce. Maybe qualcuno, non si sa. If I start speaking a different language, who's going to understand? Nobody. So unreasonableness is like speaking a different language and saying, but I'm really saying something important. Okay, but you're saying it in a language that nobody understands. So you better make an effort so that somebody may understand. So reasonableness is a very, very important discipline. And how do you know that you are communicating? You get the response from the others. You are responding to me beautifully today. I'm very excited. Everybody's looking at me, everybody's nodding, everybody's there. You know. Anybody who ever had any preaching experience knows very well, where is the pastor? that if the congregation is not responding, there is no way that you can have a good homily. You can't. Everything is flat, it's not exciting words, it's a disaster. So the reasonableness comes when you say something and you look at somebody and say, oh yeah, that's true. That's exactly what it is. So when I came here, as I said, there was a gift of Mozambique to the US. And if there is one thing that I like in life, is to speak about the peace process in Mozambique. Because Mozambique was never a country. Never a country. It was never unified, never independent, never at peace. It was a Portuguese colony that put together 135 different groups, dozens of different languages. They called it Mozambique in Berlin, but the Mozambicans never chose to make Mozambique Mozambique. It was imposed on them by the Europeans. So in 1975, there was a military coup in Lisbon. And the military decided to get rid of these colonies. And suddenly Mozambique became independent. So Frelimo, the Frente de Liberação de Moçambique, became the government of Mozambique. And they wanted to make a country out of all these different people. And how do you make a country when there was no country before? How do you do it? They tried to build a unified, strong, centralized country using Soviet models. And they said, religion, no more. We are modern. We don't need religion. We don't need this old stuff of animists and Christians and Muslims. We are modern people. Guess what? A lot of people were believers. A lot of people were religious. And they were not happy. And then they said, well, you need to be really dedicated to the state. So there is no private property anymore. And if you want to move from one place to the other, you need to ask permission. People start saying, but why do I need to have permission to go to see my field, my animals, my ancestors? And they didn't like it. So they started the process of feedback that the new government didn't like. Because they were saying, oh, you are with the colonial power. You want the old world. You don't want a new Mozambique. And the others were saying, no, we want a Mozambique that has room for everyone. And they started clashing. The more they clashed, the more they got entrenched. One saying, I really want a unified Mozambique, a national Mozambique, a centralized Mozambique. And the other one saying, I really want my own traditions, I really want my own way of doing things. Smart enough. South Africa, Rhodesia, all whites, lots of money, start buying weapons, a joke. In a country of 12 million, 1 million dead. A lot of people. A lot of people. So how did peace come about? I think it's really a miracle. Because when somebody killed your parents, your siblings, your children, it's hard to speak peace. It's very hard. You know how people now make sure that these soldiers were dedicated to the cause? You know how they would do it? They would rape the young kids, 8, 10, 12 years old men, old boys. Then send them back to the village to kill their parents. So that they could not go to the village anymore. That they were perceived as being so evil that they would never be able to be back in the village. How do you start speaking peace in those conditions? And yet, they did. They did. And fortunately enough, they did that without trusting the colonial power, without trusting the Portuguese. They looked for a place and they found this Christian community, Comunidad Sant'Egidio, because there was a bishop in Mozambique that died a few weeks ago, Jaime Gonzalez, who was a friend of ours. He was just a priest when he was studying in Rome. But when in 1975 there was this coup and Mozambique became independent, this bishop, this priest, was one of the few black native Mozambicans that could become bishop. The Catholic Church had a policy of making only white Portuguese bishops in the colonies until Parliament II. So when Portugal gained the independence of Mozambique, this guy became bishop in Beira, the second largest city of the country. And when he came back to Rome for the Visita ad Limina, the Catholic had, as you know, the Pope, and every single bishop on earth used to come every 5 years, now it's every 7 years, to visit the Pope personally, so that the church is together. So he came to Rome for this Visita ad Limina, and he came to visit us in a congregation like this, and he spoke about the fact that he couldn't celebrate Mass, he was put in jail twice, he was prohibited to go and visit the communities. And we decided to help him out. Not just giving money, not just giving medicine, but also giving political support for religious freedom in Mozambique. For 10 years we worked on religious freedom in Mozambique. And then the government realized that it was actually good to speak with Renan, to find a way out. And so with the help of the churches, they asked Sant'Egidio to help with this mediation. And this is how the peace came in Mozambique. Peace is very fragile these days in Mozambique. They're starting again, maybe to start another civil war. Please pray for Mozambique. But for more than 20 years, they have been in peace because they wanted to build a country that they called Mozambique. The agreement was a way to take what was given to them by history, by the legacy, and say, no, this is what we want to do. So the fourth discipline, beyond being attentive, being intelligent, being reasonable, is to be responsible. Responsible for what you can do, for what I can do, for what we can do together. And so, what I learned in Mozambique is that, one, I always need to tell the story of the Mozambicans, to give credit to them, to the courage of those that were able to bring peace in a country that suffered so much. Because I believe that if peace was possible in Mozambique, it's possible anywhere. If they were able to do it there, a state-led initiative done by countries like Tanzania, Denmark, Switzerland, Costa Rica, and brings together NGOs. We had the first meeting in Costa Rica 2 years ago, and then one in the Philippines. And Seton Hall is part of this coalition globally. And I think it's very important for me because this is what I do. I try to do things, not just to teach. I try to bring about the change that is possible, because we should never think that states are already made. Mozambique tells us that states are always in the making, that political formation, countries, are always in the making. The US is always in the making. The US is a very different country today than it was 50 years ago, 100 years ago, 200 years ago. And the way the US is going to be 20 years from now, 50 years from now, depends on us, the way we respond. We take care of this country, we take care of this community, we take care of this way of being together. This is why, in a way, I'm delighted that I can speak with you, because I feel that I can contribute my little 2 cents to making this country and this world, the country and the world that needs to be. I would say that I'm probably going to stop here for my remarks, but I'm very happy to continue on a question and answer. I know that some of you have been thinking of what I said and writing down things and so on. But for the moment, I would say let's stop here. Thank you.
Good afternoon to all, and thank you, Dr. Bartoli, for that very insightful presentation. My name is Nicole, and I'm visiting the United States. I live in Shanghai, China. I've been there for almost 10 years, and I teach English there. And I really have adopted a Chinese mindset when it comes to approaching peace and issues surrounding peace. As we say in China, China is a peaceful nation, although you may have heard otherwise on the news. Dr. Bartoli, I would just like to comment. You mentioned that the first effort to bring peace in a troubled world is by way of God. But I do have questions, my friend. Who's God? The Western God? How do we bring China and South Korea into the talks? Because in China, we don't have a national religion. We don't have a God in South Korea. We don't have a God in Singapore. So how do we bring these very important nations, particularly China, because it is a developing country, the tiger is standing, the most, in terms of economics and all, the second most powerful nation in the world. So how do we bring the Chinese to the table, Dr. Bartoli? So that's my first question, if by God. Because the Chinese will close their ears if you attempt to talk about God. It's futile, and you're not allowed to do so if you're on their land. Carrying that a little bit further, Dr. Okay, sure. Do you want the microphone, Dr. Bartoli? Okay.
So, I think that God is dead, and is dead in a very powerful way. China may not be aware, but God is definitely there. So my answer is that, first of all, there is a very important recognition of what you said about China being a peaceful country. China is peaceful and not peaceful as any country. It's not always peaceful. It's not only peaceful. And sometimes, what you do is complicated. So if you try to transform little islands into outposts that will justify territorial claim that everybody else around you do not like, well, you're doing something problematic. It's not just that you're doing it peaceful. But my point is that China has a very long tradition. And one important leader of this cultural tradition is Confucius. One of the most important disciples of Confucius was Seton. And he became an extraordinarily wealthy man because he was a diplomat. And he likes to say already 2,000 years ago that diplomacy is bringing two countries and making them friendly without using soldiers or money. Interesting. And this was 2,000 years ago. So China has an extraordinary history of diplomacy. That's what I'm trying to connect with. And I'm convinced that when the first Christians arrived to China, when the first Christians that were in China already helped the Buddhists translate the sutras into Chinese. Think about it. China became Buddhist because of Christians helping them to translate from Sanskrit to Chinese, because the Christians knew both. And the Chinese could not read Sanskrit, and the Indian could not translate in Chinese. The Christians were the one helping. So the Lord is working in a mysterious way. And trust me, He's working. We may not know it, and we don't need to be too bombastic about it. We actually need to be careful. Just look around and let it be. I'm very confident. So that's my answer to your first question. Do you have a second question?
Okay, thank you, Dr. Bartoli. I would also like to talk about the poor. Last year, during the fall, there was a book that was published called Black Earth. I can't recall the name of the author, but the book started out by talking about the displacement of the Jewish people during what we frequently call the Holocaust, and how the displacement of the poor has been made into an international policy. We need to listen to the poor. My companion here, my talking companion today, we were talking about listening to the poor. But if we have capitalist policies that frequently displace people in Syria, in Iraq, and Afghanistan, these are international policies that continue to do so. How can we listen to the poor? We're murdering them, we're displacing them, we're continually creating situations that create an underclass. How do we address that? And I don't mean to be provocative, but it seems to me that some of the most powerful countries in the West have adopted a very hostile policy of creating wars for resource grabs, this continual cycle of poverty. So the poor will never be listened to. In fact, they're being silenced. Will you please address that, Dr. Bartoli?
Yeah, so I agree with you that humans can be very violent to one another, that they can create conditions structurally so that millions are displaced, and there is this creation of poverty by human action. But humans can also do the reverse. And so the only answer that I can give you in this context is actually the answer of a person to person. Jesus was one, and the actions that is required from us is my action, is the personal action that I can do. The examples that we have in history of one person making the difference in many, many, many people's life is very telling. If everybody would take that responsibility on, the world would be different. So we can tell many stories of how one person underground railroad. I think that it's good to remember how the wellness and the freedom of each of us was connected to the choice of somebody. So I would say go one by one.
I didn't know how to start it, but when you were talking, when you were talking, and you said that it begins with God, that's how I felt. Because it's like, even those of us who know God, don't agree on how to say it, you know. So the conflict between ISIS and the rest of the world. And ISIS has a way of how to serve God. And we have our way of how to serve God. And if God is going to begin it, then we need to listen to Him so that the conflict can start to be resolved. But we don't even agree on how to listen to this God. How are we going to do it? You explained it. You said it begins with one person doing their part. But it's so overwhelming. It's like, sometimes I don't want to listen to public radio anymore. I'm traveling, I'm in good spirit, and bombing. Afghanistan, another suicide bombing, another this. And I'm depressed already. And I don't care whether they are not listening anymore. It's overwhelming because I can just, I'm always saying that all the conflicts, I pray for the mothers, you know, the parents there. I can't just imagine me here with this conflict and children. What am I doing? So my mind goes to that and to these people. When is it going to happen? When are you going to start it? What is going to happen?
So that's what I don't know. But I know that when you pray for the mothers, God is with you. When you pray with the mothers, God is with you. The mother of Jesus was at the cross. Traditions say that he was probably 33. She may have been 55. Think about a mother seeing the son killed at birth. And scripture said that she just kept everything in her heart. I like it. I like the idea that humanity has a heart of a mother that is able to look at the son killed on a cross and say that. Just say that. There is something beautiful and terrible about killing somebody on the cross. There is something beautiful about the mothers being there, welcoming that death and that mystery. So you are not alone. You are not alone. And she was not alone. And what I think we need to be open to is this experience of not being alone. Life is a mystery, you know. Just the fact that we are alive is such a fragility. We can be dead with so little, and yet we are alive. So I trust this mystery of life. I trust this word that was given to me. And I don't know how it's going to unfold, but every time I live, I just want to contemplate this mystery of life that was stronger than that. This mystery of life that was true in Mary at the cross. And by the way, there was also disciples at the cross, and they were together, and this man that is dying is saying, this is your mother, this is your son. someone else when he was back. To me, that's incredible. Even if the resurrection was not true, just the story of the cross alone is an extraordinary invitation for us to be better, to be more generous, to be good to one another.
I just have a quick comment and then a question. Dr. Bartoli, I have had so much food for thought. I don't know where to begin. But I
hope you don't have any indigestion. We'll
no.
have to walk together and then we will absorb it.
One thing you said was the Good Samaritan became good after he did the deed to the man on the road, which is good. I remember someone saying, when you give a Christmas gift, the person you give it to is okay, but you are happier for giving the gift to the person.
This is the only word that is attributed to Jesus that is not in the gospel. When it says, there is greater joy in giving than in receiving.
Yes, yes. You said something about the micro-agreements that Syria had with its neighbors.
Not with its neighbors.
Yeah.
At the level of the community. So I was making the example of South Orange. Imagine a little village in Syria where there was war, and there was the armies fighting one another. And yet, even in the midst of the war, they were able to move the water, move some people, to say, let's stop for 2 days. So these are micro-agreements, very small ceasefires. This is what I was describing. Not a micro-agreement for the whole country with the neighborhood, but micro things. Within Syria. Within even a small village.
Yes.
A village divided,
yes,
or a city divided, and usually it's an imam, and there's a pastor, it's a doctor, somebody that knows someone else.
Yeah. Another thing is you talked about the poor being invisible. The other, I was just talking to my mate here, my discussion mate, that I was listening to news and they were talking about a member of our Senate, Speaker of the House, Ryan, who recognized after listening to a woman who came to Congress and said, I am working, I make $10 an hour, my husband makes $8.50 an hour, but we cannot feed our children and ourselves. So please do not cut food stamps. And he was surprised. It's like he never knew they were poor people. And it's that's the same thing you said, they are invisible. Nobody pays attention. And it's good that you make me think about thinking about the poor makes you want peace. Because if people are hungry, people are angry, and there will never be peace. But if we try, as the hymn goes, let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me. I thank you for your words.
Thank you. Thank you for yours. Thank you for yours.
My name is Augustine Wagzi. I work at Assistant College. Thank you very much for giving us this. If we read the Bible, we have read it several times that in some cases God gave power to the Israelites to fight with their enemies. So nations upon nations, or tribes upon tribes. Recently, over the last few years, U.S. and other coalitions been fighting in Afghanistan, we fought in Iraq. And my question is that, what are your thoughts? Can we use these wars to resolve the conflicts that are among or between us? Is it the right way to do, to go on war, to resolve issues, to bring peace, or negotiations?
So, for those who go to war is always justified. So you cannot go to war if you do not believe that because they want to go to war, and war is right, war is just, victory will follow. But victory doesn't come because you want to win. Victory comes because you win. And very often it's a very costly investment. War is very costly, very painful, very difficult. And I believe that in the end the solution is always a political one. So my point is why don't we start from the political one rather than the other way? So even if you do not want to get into the argument, is war okay, can you do war, and so on and so forth, war should always be the last resort. But the problem is that when you believe in war and you have a lot of ways to make war, then you tend to believe that that's going to work. And it's not true. There is a very interesting conversation that I had with a Sufi leader from Libya who is trying to bring about peace in his country. And he was saying, I cannot speak with those who have weapons. Because weapons are making these people wrong in the appreciation of their own power. Because they have the weapons, they think that they are more than they are. The weapons, in a way, becomes almost a... Yeah, exactly. You become a servant of the weapons. Instead of you deciding, the weapons decide for you. So you always put yourself in a difficult position when you believe in weapons. Because you always need to keep the capacity you have to control, to decide, to really be the one doing it. So I think it's a very difficult conversation. I really believe that if we keep the poor in the horizon in front of us, we will really have a different look at war. Very, very different.
Professor, thank you. You made reference to the story of Mozambique. Why were they able to put things together that we can see the same thing in, let's say, the Democratic Congo, other places in Africa? Because the story goes back to how colonials imposed unity, as it were, and the unity in a way things are falling apart. What happened in Mozambique that can't happen elsewhere? Can you just highlight more on the Mozambique story?
So I believe actually that what happened in Mozambique can happen anywhere and should happen anywhere. That what happened in Mozambique simply that the Mozambicans decided by themselves if they wanted to be a country, what kind of country they wanted to be, what kind of political system they wanted to have, what kind of international relations they wanted. The regular stuff that especially here in the United States is obvious. But in many countries it's not obvious at all. Because many countries are not countries. They are left over of histories. They are imposed by colonial boundaries and it's a very complicated world. So the world needs to be healed. The world needs to be put together by people saying, this is my country. This is a country I want. This is a country that I want to invest into. And I think that one of the time this is happening. Now, if you look at Tunisia, Tunisia is a country that for a long time was not a separate country, was part of a much bigger empire. The Romans, the Ottoman empires, and so on. But now Tunisia is a beacon of what it means to be an Arab country that is democratic and stable and inclusive and pray for Tunisia. We need Tunisia. Tunisia is a gift of God to all of us. If Tunisia works, it's great news for everybody. Am I making sense? Sure. So in that sense, what the Mozambicans did is actually what any country should do. And in many ways, I think even the US. The US should re-engage itself, and restart the country in a more democratic, more inclusive, more just way. But it's true for China, it's true for every country. Every country needs to be better, in representing people's interests and needs and you're welcome.
One question. There's one under somewhere.
I'm happy to continue as much as you want. I'm happy to finish. I don't want to close. It's up to you. I'm very happy with the way we are doing it. So.
Dr. Bartoli, I had a question. It seems when I engage in political discussion, watch the news, and try to get my finger on the pulse of how we in the West look at the world, it seems like we judge based on issues of, so we judge a nation or a political system based on issues of standard of living and GDP and industriousness. And this is how we judge the world now. The world is improving, certain areas are improving because they're becoming much more industrious, and there are different metrics for that. Greater levels of college education, higher standard of living, things of that nature, and they're becoming more westernized. So that's another method of saying it's basically the same thing. Look at China; it's becoming so westernized, but it seems to confuse the issue. It seems as though we're thinking that is something that's good. And it may not at all be something that's good. It doesn't address issues of social justice. It doesn't address issues of values, right and wrong, religious tradition that are an undercurrent in societies. And all we think about is, the communities that I circulated is. Issues of industriousness, and that's what makes us in different ways saying the same thing. It seems like that's a trend now. I wanted you to comment on that.
So there is a trend in general in the world in which we live, in which the economic value is equated with value. So if you have money, you value more. If you have a certain standard of living, you are better, and so on. And I think that's wrong. I think that human life is much more than just money. Human expression is much more than just economic performance. So in that sense, I do agree with you that we need to have a much richer sense of what is good and how good comes about. I think it is important also to recognize that what is good requires the commitment of everyone. That you cannot have a society that is truly good if you have millions of people, billions of people that are displaced and suffering and poor and impoverished. So I think that the economic reading of life should not tell us, oh, these are the successful ones, these are the good ones, and these are the unsuccessful ones because they are not capable of doing this, but rather, all together, we need to find a way to bring about what is really good. And what is really good is good for everyone. So, I'll give you an example that has to do with knowledge. If you're interested in mathematics, you may know that there is a young boy who was 15 in Mongolia that successfully concluded a math course at MIT. Because MIT now has courses online for free. And the guy had internet access in Mongolia, and so he started following MIT courses. He could not get the credit, but he could get the knowledge. How can it possibly be that somebody in Mongolia can understand the MIT course in Boston, Massachusetts? Because we are one. We are humans. So mathematics discovered somewhere can be understood completely somewhere else. What is true everywhere. What we know being good must be good for everyone. And we need to get there. We tend to believe that what is really good must be good for me first or for us. And because you don't have it, I have it more. Because there is something terrible about the exclusion. I'm not only happy because I have it, but because you don't have it. And so I think it's important for us to really move away from this logic and really say, no, the logic that we need to engage is that every single human person that is living today, that ever lived and will live, is with me. And I need to live with everyone who is here today, who was before me and will be after me. And that's my horizon. That's where I am. That's where I need to be. That's the place of God.
Top of the night is Pastors, and I'm happy to be here. I see with this topic here leads to many subtopics as well. I would like to ask you, did you look into also, because we have to look at the deeper aspects of the origin and history of this country, of its foreign policy, to our conflict resolution. What was during Rome's height of its power, what was their application of conflict resolution as well as their brethren, the Greeks? Because I find that to understand the deeper aspects of this country here, we have to look back also at Greece and Rome, because this is the start of Western thought and everything else. Two, we talk about religion and God being the way and everything, and we also have to understand that one size doesn't fit all for everybody. Many people may want to look at God through more of a spiritual lens and everything, and not maybe so much on a religious aspect. What if it goes a little deeper than just getting some anger management? There might be some genetic problems that have run in the family, and maybe a little more than just conflict resolution. There may be a history of the family from maybe a genetic level of very bad tempers flaring and everything like that. How would you deal with that from that aspect and everything? Thank you.
So on Greece and Rome, I think that the reference is certainly there. I think it's an interesting reference for the US. But I think that the most interesting element of the US experiment that I find is actually the agreement to disagree. Is the capacity of the system to allow contradictions. Because I think that America is staying together because those contradictions were allowed to exist. And in many ways, I think that the stability of the political system requires for people to engage in the political process exactly because of those contradictions. I also think that the founding fathers were interestingly open. As I said, I come from Italy. Italy abolished the death penalty. Italy was not unified until 1861, 1870. But in the 1700s, the big piece of Italy called Tuscany, the Archduchess of Tuscany, abolished the death penalty as a state policy because they understood that death penalty was wrong and that the penalty was actually distributed unevenly, especially the poor were killed, the rich were never killed, and it was used in a very arbitrary way and so on. And this was hundreds of years ago. Well, interestingly enough, the legal expression of this position was done by Italian jurist Cesare Beccaria, and Adams quotes Beccaria. He's very interested in Beccaria. So at the beginning of the American have a lot of reference points, but then are lost. Good things that are lost. And I said, well, that's because every single country is an experiment. We need to make it better. So in that sense, the anger management genetic issue that you raised, I would flip it around the other way. What we discover, what we know now more and more, is that actually our choosing has huge effect on the way our brain works, the way our body responds, and so on. And it's never too late to change. You can actually change dramatically. You have these studies of plasticities, so that in a way you can give to your sons and daughters different genes in any way. So my strong recommendation is, as I mentioned before, it's never too early to start. It's actually good to start. And I think that we need to be hopeful that we can start. It's good to be hopeful that things can be done. It's good to be knowing that we can make a difference and that we need to do it together. We'll never do it alone. Welcome.
He just has one, three.
The last one, very good.
Yes, and I will add into Reverend Gabriel's question. The Reverend Minister of the pastor who prayed peace in Mozambique. I would like to at least bring to a feminist. What procedure did he use? Did he call people and what protocol did he use? Since you are so much.
Okay, so I'm happy to send you material and you will learn and you will study more about this. He didn't work alone, he worked with us and worked with others. But one principle that he used very systematically was something that a very old Pope said. This was John the 23rd, who said, "Seek for what unites, not for what divides." Very simple rule. Anytime you are doing something, seek for what unites, not for what divides. And this discipline is important because it says that there is something about your choosing. When you look at a conflict, you tend to believe that the conflict is already there. It's objective. It's over there. It's there. But actually, the conflict is never only there. Because if you speak about the conflict with hope, if you speak about the conflict with attentiveness, the conflict already changes. The conflict, for example, you can see that in a family. Now, you may have a kid that has a tantrum, and you can say, oh, this is an evil spirit, and you start beating up. Or you can pay attention and say, what happened, kid? Let me understand. And your attentiveness, your listening, actually changes the tantrum. And sometimes kids need somebody that says, stop, don't do that. And they don't have anybody saying it, and they scream because nobody's there for them. So conflict is the same. Conflict is a symptom of something that is not working. But if you pay attention to the symptom and you understand what is not working, then it becomes an opportunity to create something that was not there before. In this case, an independent, free Mozambique that is at peace. Does that make sense?
Thank you. All right, so we really appreciate your talk, Dr. Bartoli. What we'll do is we'll have time to have refreshments and to meet him and speak with him more directly. I want to ask now for Reverend, I'm sorry, you showing something? Oh, yes. This event is free and for everyone. We would like to always continue to bring you these lecture series. We just ask you totally voluntary. If you would like to give a donation, we'd like to, you have the envelopes within your brochure and the donation box here, which will also move over to the other room when we're done here. Ado? Thank you.
Maria and the committee, when we were thinking about who to invite, you were going to invite a scholar, but guess what? You got a double or triple dose. Scholar, pastor, bishop. And then you go. You've covered so many grounds and we appreciate your coming second in the series. And so it gives us more hope for the years to come. Thank you. Thank you, thank you. In my original language, the one language spoken by my father, the word thank you means I wish you long life and good health to enjoy the life. Thank you. Dr. Yamba, we can't ask you to stand, so sit and you will say what you're going to say. By saying, we thank you. The whole series created with the whole purpose that let people smell some flowers while they live. So we want to tell you in your presence, it is even more symbolic that as we speak right now, we've gone back to put together what was being broken, and it makes all of us very proud. Our prayers go with you, that may the good Lord give you the wisdom to do what you need to do. And I think the associate team is with us. Please, we thank you for coming with Dr. Yamba. And it reminds us that the elder doesn't walk alone by himself. And so thank you for being a walking stick for Dr. Yamba. Thank you. And for all of you today, we say thank you for coming with us. And let's meet at the fellowship hall for the conversation to continue. Let us pray. Lord, you created the world and continue to sustain the world. You have revealed yourself to all the nations, even though we approach you in so many ways. Sometimes we think you are not there, but you still have the world in your hands. For God, you love the whole world, that you die for this world and continue to bleed for this world. Because the world has known you, some call you God, some call you Allah, some call you Nyankopon, some call you Ngebo. For others you are Chukwu, for others you are Olorum. Every language has a word to call you, because you own what you created. But Lord, make us co-creators with you, that we won't turn away when there's need to make a difference. Thank you for inspiring us this afternoon to be the best we can be for you and with you. For this, we say thank you. Amen.
So if we can go just around the hall to the left. Thank you. Or through here.